Good evening. My topic today is India's infrastructure, the missing piece in its economic growth. As we all know, India is growing enormously and we aim to be a manufacturing hub. But a key factor that contributes to us being a manufacturing hub is manufacturing. But unfortunately, we have an infrastructure constraint which directly affects manufacturing. So India aims to improve its manufacturing sector's contribution in the GDP to about 25% from its current 14 odd percent. But in order to do that, it needs to develop an infrastructure rapidly with quality infrastructure because China, which we all know is a major contributor to manufacturing for the world, is now facing overcapacity and is moving towards a consumption-based economy. So we are trying to basically feed off some of the industries that would be leaving China due to cost reasons and over constraints. So main issues that we face in India are, just to give you an overview, are we have a severe shortage of infrastructure. Then there's a severe shortage of quality infrastructure. There is a problem of timely delivery of infrastructure, and the power sector is something which is lagging. Although transmission has improved, we still have issues with the transportation of power from the source to the end customer, which can be industrial or at homes. And also, many industries depend on our infrastructure to grow. So many industries haven't grown yet to their maximum because there is a lack of infrastructure. So I'll give you an example. Let me just start with saying that lacking infrastructure hampers growth and investment. So if you see in China, the way that they have grown is that they have employed a lot of money into infrastructure development. So by government spending, they have been able to employ many industries, provide employment to people. Their industries like steel, logistical industries, etc. have been able to grow. But in India, unfortunately, we are still catching up with the infrastructure. It's estimated that every year around 4 to 5% of our GDP is lost because of poor infrastructure, right from roads being narrow or inefficient, railways not reaching certain places where they are supposed to reach. There's a lack of shipping networks. Airports are not in a great condition in most of our country except for the major cities. So all these have led to a drastic reduction in growth and investment. So what do investors look for? They look for a place where they invest money and they can take out returns. And when the infrastructure is not there to support that, they have no motivation to invest large monies into the country. So that is a major issue. Second thing is that infrastructure development can actually turn and support demand in the industrial sector and as an economy for the country. So as a consumption-based economy, our aim is to be an economy where we can sustain ourselves with our own domestic consumption. But what we do not realize is that for that to happen, we need to have a strong infrastructure. There has been proof, from the World Economic Forum and all that have said that for every 1% of GDP spent, there has been an average of 2% of growth in various sectors, and there has been employment generated through it. An example is by spending $1, UK was able to generate 2.5% of extra GDP growth. Similarly, Brazil spent for every dollar they spent, they generated $2.5 of economic growth. China spends $1 and gains 2.2. It's estimated that if India spends just $1 more, we'll be able to generate at least $2 in economic growth. And being a consumption-based economy, this means that more people would be able to consume products domestically, which in turn would result in our own industries growing more. So, so a simple example could be that if, let's say, a road infrastructure improves, it would lead, let's say, a road infrastructure improves to a hill station, which currently now is not well connected. It would lead to a lot of tourism. And as we all know, tourism industry is one of the largest employers in the world. So this effect is a positive effect is what infrastructure brings to a region and to its people. Similarly, infrastructure will help a lot of individual industries to grow. Example, cement. We know why, because directly you use cement for building roads, buildings, etc. steel, which is again a raw material. Then you have automobile industry for both goods to move, people to move. Real estate goes up once infrastructure is in place. You have a large road and you have good facilities. People tend to want to live more, build their own houses, closer to these infrastructure. Then capital goods go up. Consumers consume more. As infrastructure goes, it provides more employment. Similarly, oil and gas consumption goes up. So there are a lot of allied industries that would definitely benefit. And another thing that I would like to say is that one of the main reasons that we have in our country is that we feel is hampering our growth is that we have a lack of employment. Infrastructure actually is one of the largest employers of unskilled labor, and we do have a problem of unskilled labor who are unable to find job. So there are certain estimates that see between the age of 15 to 29, about 30% of India in that age bracket has no job. Although the official figures are conflicting, a lot of researchers point to that. Now, unskilled labor is one of the major labor needed for infrastructure development. Now, coming to the power sector, which I would like to stress upon is that India has always been a energy thirsty country. Recently, we have made inroads and have developed a lot of generation of electricity, but the transmission seems to be overburdened and also the infrastructure is weak. And that is some place we need to really ramp up in terms of delivery of power from source to the consumer. And a third place that I would like to emphasize on infrastructure is that specifically when it comes to infrastructure in India, there is a big issue in terms of getting funding for it, completing the project on time, and the project being economically viable. Now, the first is that, first to talk about the viability part is that, like in certain cities, if I take the airport sector, public-private partnerships have worked out. But there will be certain sectors where the private sector cannot be involved in it. India seems to be relying more on public-private investment to grow because of its own debt, the government's debt, and its inability to generate funds enough. But certain places, for example, you take the airport sector itself. In a tier 3 town, you don't expect it to be economically viable immediately, at least for the next 15-20 years. But in those places, the government has to step up and invest. There is a feeling that the investment is not enough yet. We are investing, but it's very less. And the reason is that the Indian government does not have enough funds. That brings us to the point of raising of capital. Now, the main reason why we are not able to raise capital is because of our debt. Another major reason is that we are unable to raise debt because of the trust factor. We don't complete projects on time in India. There is rampant corruption. So we need to address these. How do we finish projects on time? Effective project management, SOPs have to be followed on what has to be done when. And so these are major issues that has to be addressed. And corruption, this is something that is all pervasive in our country, but mechanisms have to be taken. There have been proposals for the government to start using a transparent bidding online, although we have moved to it, but there has been limited success. Still corruption is rampant, there are issues. So that is some aspect that we need to deal with. Third is completing projects on time. With whatever knowledge we have, we can understand that the projects get delayed mainly because of funding. So it again goes back to funding and government will. So there is a big funding issue, which I have already told you about previously. If that is addressed, many projects should get done in time. Second is that land acquisition is a major problem in our country. For major infrastructure projects, we still do face a problem of acquiring land. It's as simple as people can simply put a case and get a stay order for forever, and the project never moves, even if it takes 10 years, 15 years. We have many live examples of that. So these are the main issues that our country is facing in terms of infrastructure. So I feel that if infrastructure as a whole sector is addressed and is given a boost, India as a whole would continue to grow and sustain. See, the world overall is continuing to spend heavily on infrastructure. We begin to see Africa now spend heavily. Countries like Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa have now gone, very seriously. They have taken infrastructure development, building railroads, everything. If you take US is now again, US has an issue of a decaying infrastructure road system. They are now taking steps to renovate it. And China, as usual, it's estimated that India needs $1.5 trillion over the next decade, but China is spending close to $720 billion in 2 years alone. So if we do not keep up with all these countries, we will be left behind. So the growth story that India would become developed, or we are a strong economy, or we are an economy that is bound to grow, might actually not grow fast enough, and we might continue to remain a myth that a country that was supposed to grow and never really grew to its potential. Thank you.